Welcome to a live episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, SCS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises and delivers the best guests in all of true crime. We're about to welcome a new best guest today, but the other two you have seen before. Today, we are diving back into Diddy. For those of you who are with us earlier, there was a really big press conference today, disturbing on many levels, which we're going to ask the psychologist about, as well as the other guests. Maybe try to go into a scary place, which is the mind of Sean Diddy Combs with Dr. John Delatorre. We'll see how far we want to enter that mind of his. And we'll get some of the legal questions answered by Melba Pearson. The short of it is at this press conference today, it was revealed that there are 120 new civil lawsuits that are about to be filed by an attorney in Houston, as well as another firm based out of LA. The Houston attorney's name is Tony Buzbee, a well-known personal injury attorney. He revealed that one of Diddy's alleged victims is 9 years old. So that was really mind-blowing today. Best guests. Got a New York native, Melba Pearson, next to a Jersey native, me. She's called Miami home for over 20 years. She got her undergraduate degree at NYU, completed her studies at Hofstra School of Law, which is now the Morris Dean School of Law. She is a civil rights and criminal law attorney. She works in the Jack D. Gordon Institute for Public Policy at Florida International University, otherwise known as FIU, a place that Carm, my mom, a Holocaust survivor, and myself had the opportunity to speak at an amazing university. So next up, John Delatorre has been on the show. It's been a while. We got to get him back more frequently. He is a licensed psychologist in Texas, Arizona, and New York State. He also does analysis for television news, and he's a certified clinical traumatologist. We might need him after hearing about Diddy today. And last but not least, you've got Tommy Scoville. He has the YouTube channel, The Lifeboat. What is the other one? Crims and Cults. Crims and Cults.
Cults and Crims. Yeah.
Cults and Crims. I was close.
Yes.
I was close.
You are.
You were
very
close. And Tommy is amazing. He turned his life around. He was successful, got addicted to painkillers. Painkillers led to some bank robberies. Bank robberies led to some time in federal prison. So Tommy understands what it's like on the other side and what it is like these days for Diddy, which is probably not too pleasant. But if these allegations are true, I think he deserves a whole lot worse. So basically, just a very quick backgrounder here. In an indictment, federal prosecutors, they allege that Sean Diddy Combs and his associates threatened, abused, and coerced women and others around him to fulfill his sexual desires. That includes forcing victims into engaging in what was recorded sexual activity. That was better known, or is better known by most now, as these freakouts. His lawyer says he's an innocent man. He pleaded not guilty to racketeering and sex trafficking charges. Let's just start, Melba, with you from a legal standpoint. Now, Sean Diddy Combs, his lawyer offered up a $50 million bond, which was denied. And now his legal team is taking it to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. That is your old neighborhood, the Southern District of New York. What do you think happens with that? That's likely to be denied too. But what about the $50 million in general and the appeal?
Yeah. So again, thanks so much for having me on this evening. And I don't think that it's going to go anywhere. I think we've had two judges that denied him bail, so he can appeal again. But the concern here is, number one, is he going to come back for trial? Number two, is he going to be a danger to the community? And most importantly, are witnesses going to be tampered with? And as we've read in these indictments and hearing in so many of these lawsuits coming forward, intimidation and silencing was central to the way he behaved. So there's no universe where I think he's going to be released, because the judge and the prosecution, rightfully so, have a concern that he's going to try and intimidate these victims. And there may even be survivors that we don't know about yet, because we're at 120. We started off with like 1 or 2 at the beginning of this year. So I believe more will come forward, but he may try and intimidate those people so that they don't come forward as well. So to preserve the case, and again, to preserve the community, he's going to end up staying behind bars until trial. I don't see any.
And Tony Buzbee, by the way, said that I think it was Tommy, correct me, of like 3,200 other people had reached out. Is that right? To
yes.
The firm? Yeah.
Yep.
So about 3,200 other people reached out to the Buzbee law firm. They vetted all these people, but you can almost be guaranteed that there's going to be more people coming forward. John Delatorre, Melba's from New York City. There's extra background noise. They're talking in the back. Let's mute everyone. See that sound? Can you do that, COE? That'd be great if you can do that. She'll mute and unmute, and I'll start it, I guess, since she's not doing that. And then I'll unmute you guys. If you're able to unmute yourselves, that would be awesome. But we are getting a little bit of extraneous noise. But Dr. John Delatorre, you know, I'm from right outside New York City, worked there as a reporter. Melba's from New York. A lot of crazy things happen in New York City. This is next level insanity. I know you're going to say crazy things happen anywhere. But it was revealed today that his youngest victim out of this pool of victims that have come forward is a 9-year-old. How does that change the landscape of this case, which was demented and twisted and depraved before? What does it do to it now?
I think it depends. So I think a lot of what maybe kind of the defense mechanism, right? Not legal defense, but the sort of psychological defenses that Diddy is going to be using is going to be centered around this idea that he didn't have any contact with the victims. I think he's going to say that maybe someone else did it, right? Someone in his inner circle did it. And so then he's like now guilty by association or something like that. With the 9-year-old, we really have to start looking at, is there a possibility of some pedophilia that's going on? Typically, if someone has a paraphilic disorder, which means that they have a sexual deviancy that's diagnosable, right? That it's a problem that gets in the way. It's a problem that makes it so that someone needs treatment. It makes it so that someone has a problem with sexual boundaries. Typically, if someone has one paraphilic disorder, they often have multiple paraphilic disorders. And so it's certainly possible, and not out of the realm, you know, a possibility that given the 9-year-old one, there's the likelihood that there's multiple 9, 10, 11, 12s in which we're going to start looking at potentially a pedophilic disorder, which maybe turns this into a sex offender case in some other jurisdiction, state level or something like that. And, you know, maybe some pictures were done of the 9-year-old, potentially that now we're looking at child porn issues. So this is bad. There's no way around this. This is disgustingly bad.
I'm curious what I said. I thought I said freak off. I must have said something otherwise, but it is the third show of the day, and here we are. Tommy Scoville, I mean, you had some time to digest what we watched together earlier. I guess having taken a breath with that and you know, absorbing it, what is your reaction a couple of hours later? Do you think this thing is now going to just explode in terms of the you know, the size and scope of this investigation and the tentacles?
Yeah, the tentacles really are probably what I got hung up the most on. Going back and reading everything and watching what he said, the he really wants to disassemble this. I've never heard anybody say anything. He listed, if you were in the neighborhood, he just kept going back further. If you happen to be at these parties, if you were a witness to this, if it was on your property, if you helped clean this up, he really went out of his way to make it so that you're not really going to get away with, well, I was just hanging out there, it happened, but I wasn't involved. Like, he really made a point of saying he wants to disassemble this. And with the size, I think the last thing he said too was that there's another 100 to 120 that out of the original 3,000 that they're still working with, but assume will reach the level that the 120 we have now is. So you're already more like closer to the 240 range, which is just, it's a lot. I mean, I can't imagine how much discovery there would be. And yeah, it's just amazing. The amount of paperwork and the amount of stuff that this is going to generate that they're going to have to deliver to this man in a cell. I mean, I don't think you could fit the discovery for this in a cell.
Yeah,
I'm dead serious. Like, I've seen discovery before that took up like 40 boxes, but they're saying 20 years, right? And
yeah, I think it's longer than 20 years because they're saying it goes back to 91. That's 30 something years. It's 33 years, I think, if I'm doing the math right. So Mossberg Mom here, ABC National News said a few minutes ago that Diddy was told of the stuff from today, and he maintains his innocence, that he abused no one. Back to the psychologist, Dr. John Delatorre, on this. I haven't confirmed this report. Mossberg Mom, though, is a credible human being. Let's assume that this is true. Do you think in Diddy's own mind, Dr. John, he feels like he is innocent? Is someone with these kind of like sexual deviancies, do they think what they're doing is okay in their own mind?
Yeah, but some of it depends on where they are in their offense cycle. So there are some individuals who will think that that it's okay, right? They think that for some reason that they're owed something, either something bad happened to them or that they are just so powerful that they can't be touched. And so they'll think that whatever it is that they're doing is owed to them, that they are entitled to this thing. And so from that point on, they don't really, maybe there's some transitory guilt, but they don't really view anything as being problematic. They'll use excuses like the person consented. It doesn't matter to them if it's a minor. If the parent said that it was okay, then it's okay, right? So there'll always be something that they'll use to justify and rationalize the offending behavior, whatever that is. I mean, we're going to be talking a lot about sexual abuse, but that's not the only thing that he's been doing. Coercion, manipulation, right? He's been violent, very physically violent against other people. So all of this is just for him something that he feels emboldened to do. And from that perspective, he'll never really view himself as being responsible for anything that happened.
Look at this. There's a second Carm. My mom, of course, is the one behind me in that photo. She is Carm number 1 with a K. And now we've got the C Carm. So glad I'm catching this live. She listened to the press conference on her drive home. It is indeed disturbing. Melba, Diddy's defense team has grown since the last time I reported on this. There's now a woman named Alexandra Shapiro. She's a co-founder of a boutique litigation firm, and then a New York trial lawyer named Anthony, goes by Tony Ricco, and he's joined Mark Agnifilo and someone named Tenny Garagos, who are Agnifilo is the original, the one who's been with him the last few days. What does it tell you? I mean, he's got, at least for now, for the time being, he's got a lot of money. They say he's a billionaire. But what will the different roles of these defense attorneys be? And why bolster the crew, I guess?
Well, I mean, like was said before, the amount of discovery that we're going to be looking at, the amount of evidence is going to be insane, because the reality is, I'm a former prosecutor on the state level, but when the feds move against you, they're pulling up the brake truck with the evidence. And I'm talking, the surveillance video is crisp and clear. There is no question about who it is, like then that's why they have like a 98% conviction rate, because they don't move unless the cases are 100% solid. So the defense team knows this. Diddy knows this. So he's going to gather the best in the business, or the best that he can based on his financial situation. And of course, those defense attorneys who would be willing to take on this type of case, because, you know, there's a lot involved, and also there's reputational issues that some may consider as well. So, you know, I think that the team is going to grow in order to be able to handle the volume of evidence that's going to be coming out. And I think they're going to be dividing it up to figure out, for instance, once we get to trial, who's going to cross-examine some of the survivors. Do you want a male defense attorney crossing a female survivor and looking like a bully? Or do you want to have a female defense attorney crossing a female survivor? So that way there's more parity. So there's, you know, strategies like that you have to consider. You may have someone that's really strong in debunking DNA evidence. So let's say that's an issue. That may be their role. So kind of thinking back to the, you know, OJ trial and sort of the different roles and how everything kind of played out, you know, and then we learned about DNA and how that became relevant. And it was one defense attorney, Barry Scheck, that put DNA on the map through his cross-examination and his work. So we can expect to see something similar here, where each of the attorneys are going to have their roles in terms of expertise, things that are in their wheelhouse that they're really good at. And then, of course, you have the broader strategy of who's going to be best in terms of cross-examining or bringing in evidence if Diddy has a case to put forward, which he has no legal obligation, but he may.
Right. And one more for the lawyer for now from Coffee First here. With so many victims and companies. So this guy, Tony Buzbee, basically said, look, I'm going after everybody. I'm going after the hotels, pharmaceutical companies he mentioned, I guess in relation to some of these drugs, I'm not sure. Any institutions, anyone who kind of like, you know, harbored this illicit activity. He's going after them, including celebrities. So with so many companies and victims here in the lawsuit, how does this even get handled in court? One trial, many trials, settlements. And this is just the civil side. Then there's the criminal side.
Well, usually what happens is that the civil case pauses until the criminal case is resolved. Reason being that there may be admissions or certain statements made in the trial that can now be in the criminal trial that can be used in the civil trial. And so oftentimes the civil attorneys wait to see how the criminal case plays out and then formulates their strategy based on what comes out from it. But at the same token, we did see that there was over $100 million judgment, a default judgment that was entered against Diddy in Michigan for abusing a young man there because he didn't bother to show up to court. So that is also a possibility that he may not answer some of the charges and then a judgment is entered against him. But at some point, he's going to run out of money. So these judges may end up being symbolic in some ways once his assets have been seized, everything's been sold, whatever the case may be. I don't think everyone is going to get a cash payout. But in going after these other companies, now that is an avenue by which there might be some financial compensation for the survivors who suffered terribly at the hands of Diddy.
So there's another lawyer, Tommy Scoville. That was a good wrap up there, Melba. I appreciate that. There's another attorney, and I have a feeling we're going to start hearing a lot of attorneys' names related to this case who are representing, different clients for different things. But there's one named Ariel Mitchell Kidd. She spoke with Laura Ingle, who's a friend of mine at News Nation and a friend of the COE's. And she basically said that there is a pornographic video, Tommy, showing Sean Diddy Combs, but an even more famous A-list celebrity. Is this just going to be the Titanic, the Hollywood Titanic here, where some of the biggest names in entertainment are going down? Diddy's a pretty big A-list celebrity, and this person said substantially bigger. That's not Ashton Kutcher, even though his name's been thrown around. What's happening here?
Yeah, and there's a lot of people speculating. I mean, I don't know how you could, because there are so many names and things that have been tied to this. And I think that, the spheres of people that they run in different kinds of groups. There's people who went to that party, and there's people who stayed a little later at that party. And then there's people that really stayed a little later at that party. And I think there was almost a system of figuring out how many people get to stay. They talked at the press conference today about, if you weren't willing to drink off of this, then you're gone, right? So that was like the first level of initiation. And then it has been suggested by people and alleged that, Diddy would then push up on people and be a little bit more friendly than most would be comfortable with. And if they didn't, get uncomfortable, then they stuck around a little longer. And it's a terrifying thing to me, the scope of this, right? You start thinking about all of the different people that had to have, come across people that were injured, people that ended up in hospitals. I mean, there's a lot of people alleging that, this person went to a hospital or that person went to a hospital. There's a lot of that being alleged on the, around this case. And it seems to me that, we're not seeing any of that. And the catch and kill you were just talking about, there's, I guess, 2 of those videos that people are shopping around, and, people are trying to get paid on. And I would imagine we're going to see more of them. I wonder how many people have video on their hard drives from parties or on cell phones that they don't even remember that they got. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
These were parties that everybody was drugged. These aren't the kind of drugs that keep people awake and remember and stuff. He was drugging people.
By the way,
these scary drugs.
Yeah, and by the way, it goes back to, as I said, 91. But the attorney today said that the majority of the 120 clients who are now coming forward, that they are from 2015 forward. So cell phones were well in use after 2015. So you could definitely expect, I think, to see this video. Before, just a moment of levity here. Mossberg Mom, the COE is a beautiful girl, and Joel is a lucky guy. I saw you, COE, for the first time today. Dr. John, how come people never say the COE is so lucky? That's my question to you. How come it's always, I'm so lucky?
Well, I think there's an element that, yes, you probably are the lucky one because she could choose anyone and she chose you. So
I had to work for it. I walked her dog for many months. It was grueling and agonizing, but the dog and I became excellent friends. So Dr. John De La Torre, the lawyer said this today, and it's always true. You immediately hear the media, and I don't want to group media all together because I am part of the media. I was part of the the traditional media at one point. But the lawyer said, look, they're gonna question the victims. How come they waited? My question to you is sort of, what is the psychology? This has been going on again since 1991. Why is it just being exposed now? How was everyone kept quiet? How were all the enablers quiet? The victims, how did this happen?
Well, it happened because Diddy wanted it to happen. But when it comes to everybody else, every single person, whether they're a victim or enabler, had a different reason for why they didn't want this information out. Some of the victims don't want to be seen as a victim. Some victims don't want to have any recollection that they would choose to forget that they were abused. Some of the people around Diddy's inner circle probably recognize the whole Kid Cudi thing, right? So, their car doesn't want to explode. So all of this happened because Diddy wanted it to happen, first and foremost. Now, was he able to convince other people to go along with it? Sure, he was able to do that. That doesn't mean that they did it under duress. Maybe they had their own proclivities that, Diddy allowed that opportunity for those issues to come around. But when it comes to why hasn't a victim come out earlier and said that they were victimized? Because oftentimes we blame the victim. Oftentimes we say, because I would never let.
Well, John, look at this comment, which is disturbing, but you're right on cue here from Prissy here. Victims, ? There are no victims. They wanted to be there. It just didn't turn out the way they wanted. Can you comment on that? Because a lot of people say things like this.
No, no one wants to be sexually abused. No one wants to be raped. No one wants any of that. Even those individuals who decide that they're going to do sex work, even those individuals, they don't want to be raped. They don't want to be abused. They don't want to have that content put out there and be used as fodder for jokes. Like, they don't want any of that stuff. The notion that you could choose, that you had a choice when your only other options were having your car blown up or getting kicked in the face like Cassie. I mean, wouldn't you then just do the thing? I mean, if your life's on the line, you got to do what you got to do to stay alive. And I'm not going to blame anybody for making a choice to stay alive. So these people are victims. Yes, they are. Now, why they decided not to talk about it, I mean, that's up to each individual that we'll have to address individually.
And if I can jump in on this too.
Please, Melba. Yeah, go ahead.
So not only am I a former prosecutor, I'm a former homicide and domestic violence prosecutor. So I'm well versed in this topic. But there's one thing that folks are forgetting. A lot of these folks were drugged. Meaning that, for instance, there's one of the more recent survivors that came forward talked about how she was dating somebody in the Diddy orbit because the gentleman, I believe it was a man, worked for the organization. She was not a party girl or anything like that. Apparently, he lured her and said, "Oh, I need to talk to you about something going on with your partner." So she gets in the car with them, thinking all is well, gets handed a glass of wine, and that's the last thing she remembers. The next thing she remembers is being on a pool table, being violently violated 10 different ways from sunrise. And then finding out in 2023, this happened in 2001, that, by the way, this was filmed and it was being sold as porn. So again, you cannot consent. Legally, you cannot consent if you're passed out. Period, end of story. So if you're drunk, passed out, even if you willingly took the drugs, took alcohol, whatever, if you're passed out, if somebody goes and then performs any kind of sexual activity on you, that's rape. Period, end of story. Unless you consented beforehand, hey, if I pass out XYZ, that's a separate issue. And I'm not here to kink shame. But the reality is, if someone is passed out, they cannot consent. So anything done after that is criminal activity. And I think that needs to be really clear. And then secondly, people often don't come forward because, again, it's the shame. To this day, survivors of sexual assault carry shame because as a society, we don't always support survivors. We question them. We say, well, what were you wearing? Or why were you there? Or how much did you have to drink? Or, decent girls wouldn't do X, Y, Z, A, B, C, or a man can't be raped. And there are a lot of male victims here. So they didn't want to come out and now feel that their manhood has been assailed because, they're admitting that someone harmed them in this way. So there are many reasons why people don't report, not only because of the intimidation, but because of the pain, the trauma, and the shame that they're carrying. So I really want people to to think about this because it's real, and to even work with survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, anything along those lines. As a prosecutor, it was tough because they had good days and bad days. And you had to, get them together to get them on the stand to tell the story to 12 people that they don't know of the worst day of their life and things that maybe their partner doesn't know, their family doesn't know. And they have to talk about it. So they're like, you know what? I'm not going to report. I'm just going to hold this shame inside. And now with Cassie being so brave and Little Rod coming forward, I think that was the floodgates that strengthened and enabled other survivors to come forward. So I just want to make sure folks are very clear about that.
By the way, Melba is definitely a keeper. I can tell that already. Number two, that sign language she's giving you, that's New York City right there, moving with the hands. And I already know, do not mess with Melba. She's tough. I might have to call you if the COE gives me a hard time. By the way, that stands for Chief of Everything, the wife, Melba. From Nito here, this question's for Delatorre, the doctor. But before I get to him, I want to ask Tommy. So Nito's asking the psychologist, Dr. John Delatorre, what is it like to go from luxury to jail psychologically? What is he feeling? But Tommy, He's been in there, what, like 2 weeks now? I've lost track of time.
Yeah, roughly 2 weeks.
And his lawyers say, he's feeling stronger. He's going to fight this, yada, the usual stuff you hear. What is his life really like right now inside the Brooklyn MDC?
A lot of that I think hinges on how bad his drug habit is, right? Because it's been alleged for a long time that he took Percocets, but the people that are getting tested, according to the report today, the press conference today, rather, that everybody they took up and tested were getting, they had trank in their system. So xylazine and whatever, it could be fent, it could be a couple of other really, really bad bathtub opiates. But these kill people, right? Like, I mean, not every once in a while. This is the #1 cause of death in our country between 18 and 50. And you know what? If this is what he was using to put in those drinks, there are bodies somewhere. I promise you, there would have to be. This stuff is poison. Like, this is really what we talk about on my channel almost all the time. But they estimate 60% of the pills that are coming across have the potential to take you out, right? That's really rolling the dice. And if all of these people had that stuff in them, but the shock right now for him, even if he's not really strung out, going from having that in your system for, say, 2 decades to not having it in your system at the same time, they take away your bed, your pillow. I can't describe just how bad a federal bed is. It's 2.5 feet wide. It's about that thick. And if you roll over, right, if you honestly roll over, you're done. There's a convict style of rolling over that you got to do with a hand, and you put the hand down, and because there's not enough room on that thing, it really, I guarantee you, he had the biggest bed you've ever seen. It got showed all the time in the big parties that he had. It was outside, and it was like 70 feet across. They would have everybody on it. It's a big thing at his parties. He's now on one that, is pretty small.
I love these things you learn. Yeah, I love these things you learn from Tommy Scoville, that there's a way to roll over in your bed in the federal system. I would never know that. By the way, I said freak out. That's Freudian, because that's what I do every day. But Diddy is freaking off. So that was my subconscious speaking out loud. So Dr. Del Torre, what is it like? You're an A-lister. You're this hip hop superstar. Everything comes to you on a silver platter, and now, as Tommy just said, you've got a bed that you need to put your arm down if you're going to roll over so you don't fall off, and it's cold, it smells, it's disgusting in there.
Yeah, I think everybody gets a weird, maybe misinterpretation of what it's like to be in jail. You watch all of this, content on television and movies and stuff like that, and you think that what that sliding door locking sounds like, and you don't, right? Until you hear it with your own ears when that door closes, and you know that you're not going to be able to leave. And I enter jails all the time to do my evaluations, but I'm locked in just like them. I mean, if something happens, that thing's going to happen, and it might take time for correctional officers to come assist me with whatever it is that's going on. So there is a feeling where you feel enclosed. Now, how you deal with that enclosure kind of depends on what your own personality makeup is. I perceive Diddy as someone who is very angry, and someone who's very angry has a difficult time adjusting to that transition from having everything and the freedom to do whatever it is that you want to do, and then now being at one point, I know he was on suicide watch, and I understand why he was on that. But when everything is governed for you in ways that you don't like, you have a tendency of bucking up against that. I think he has an outlet right now because he's trying to defend his freedom. But if and when he moves into a prison, that has a tendency of kind of breaking you down a lot faster than if someone who was willingly accepting the responsibility for what they were doing and then doing the time as opposed to the time doing that.
And I'm curious, you said you think he's an angry person. Why that perception as opposed to being an egomaniac, let's say, which I guess they're not mutually exclusive. But why do you think he's angry?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can go back to some of the rumors about Biggie, but I think ultimately that I think he always felt himself to not be good enough and to never really have enough. It was never going to be the amount of money, the amount of women, all the gold, all of the cash, all of these things were never really going to be enough for him. Having all the accolades and having all of these, awards and everybody coming to Diddy for, just if he blesses, the song, or if he blesses the movie, right? If Diddy puts his name on something, right, it's elevated, but I don't think he ever felt fulfilled. And I think he tried to fulfill it with whatever it is that he thought would work at that time, whether it was drugs or alcohol or women, men, it's like children. For him, it didn't matter. And when it doesn't fill that void that you have, you get angry at the world around you. You get angry that you have all of this stuff and it's never enough. And so I think at some point you learn to mask that anger really well, but it comes out and it bleeds out in other areas. I mean, the violent nature that we saw in that video with Cassie, and then the rumor about Kid Cudi and Kid Cudi coming out and saying, no, that this is true. He really blew up my car. I mean, these kinds of things all suggest that someone is willing to cross physical barriers. I mean, all of this other stuff is allegations when it comes to the sexual abuse. It's allegations until it's proven. But this kind of individual hates people. But more importantly, he hates himself. And so because he hates himself, he's going to hate everybody else. And everybody else is just an object for him to use until he feels better about himself, which that will never happen.
Wow. That's really, really insightful. Money is kind of it's kind of an illusion. I think it's necessary, but then it's like looking out at the horizon. You reach the horizon with money, and then there's another horizon that you can't quite get to. So it's like you're always looking for the next thing. And I think the doctor hit the nail on the head where Diddy just could not find happiness, and likely never will, especially under the current circumstances. This next question to the lawyer, to Melba from Becky Ireland, who's always here, friend of the show. Do you think they're going to prosecute the people who brought, I guess, and or sold Diddy's videos? I mean, this is getting ourselves a little ahead of the criminal trial, and I'm going to get back to the news conference today. That's one question. The other question, Melba, is everyone who went to a Diddy party, as far as I know, had to sign some kind of NDA, some kind of waiver. When I left Fox News of my own, I had to sign an NDA, even though I'd love to reveal certain things. But when it comes to a criminal case, do those NDAs hold up? And then this issue about the videos.
Yeah, so starting with the videos, it's all going to depend. So for instance, if you have the videos of the 9-year-old or underage victims, that's child pornography. So that is absolutely something that the feds can prosecute on. In terms of those who just bought the video of an adult, maybe not knowing the origins or just maybe being into that sort of genre, they're likely going to escape liability on that one because of the fact that, again, if you don't know the origins, and it's just like if you go to any porn website, you don't necessarily know if the people that you're watching have been trafficked, if they're there willingly, or whatever the case may be. So it's the same kind of parallel there. So I think the distinction is going to be around the issue of child trafficking and child pornography. So that's going to be the big issue. Now, in terms of the NDAs, listen, if you're subpoenaed, that NDA is not going to mean a whole lot. Because if your option is go to jail and face contempt of court or testify, folks are going to start singing. And it's not going to be any album that Diddy would like to hear, produce, or otherwise. So I don't think those NDAs are going to be able to hold up, especially in terms of the criminal activity. Now, if you're talking about business dealings or other things, that might be a bit separate. But, if you're subpoenaed because you were present for an assault, or you were present when, someone maybe you didn't witness the assault, but you saw the person come into the house, you can be more of a peripheral witness. I don't think that NDA is going to mean anything.
You heard it there. That NDA is not going to come in handy. He's never going to unalive himself or never going to like himself. And I don't know. By the way, I mean, Dr. John, to you, I mean, he was on this direct observation. Is he the kind of personality that would unalive himself now that he's facing these unbelievable charges?
No, I think he's too narcissistic for that. I think he's the kind of person that Melba will probably try to say, please don't talk, please don't talk, please don't talk. And Diddy's not gonna shut up. And I don't think so. I mean, listen, but if he is strung out, I mean, yeah, that's a different story. I mean, you kind of want the pain to go away, however way you can get that pain to go away. That's different. I don't know that he is, but what I'm saying is that without influence, is he someone who could attempt that? I mean, I guess he could, but I think he's just too narcissistic to allow that to happen.
You see the COE here. There will be no victim shaming. I think the last comment, or the one about that, was actually sincere. I don't think it was a troll. I think that people think that way, which is why I brought it up. Here's Tony Buzbee speaking in Houston earlier today. Let's take a listen. Again, Tommy and I were here for the entire thing. You can go back and watch that under the video tab on our channel. But here's a small part of it.
For each, we ask for the identity of witnesses. We also have collected pictures, videos, texts. We check venues, we check dates. We want to corroborate that the claims being made have legitimacy and merit. We have on staff now a former detective from the Major Offenders Unit of Houston Police Department who is helping us vet each claim.
Melba, he's a personal injury attorney. You know, they sometimes can have a bad reputation. I was saying earlier today, he seems to have good intentions here. How do they go about handling something of this enormity? I mean, he just said that they hired a detective from the Major Offenders Division at the Houston PD. I just can't wrap my head around the number of people and the resources it would take for each individual case. And there's 120 people think this is a class action lawsuit. It's not. It's going to be individual civil cases. I mean, what is the scope of work involved in this?
It's going to be brutal. It's going to be brutal. And so he is a personal injury attorney, but oftentimes there's that overlap into victims' rights work. So you'll see firms that do personal injury and victims' rights because of the fact that there is some connection there because of the going after the civil remedy if the statute of limitations is passed. So backing up, for those who don't know, every crime has a statute of limitations except for homicide. So there's a set amount of time that a prosecutor has to be able to bring charges against someone. And so that's why there's so many of these civil suits, because again, if these assaults happened in 1999, 2000, 2001, the statute of limitations for those types of felonies tend to be 3 to 7 years, something along those lines. So that's why they're going the civil route. Now, to answer your question in terms of how to even do this, I mean, I don't think one detective is going to be enough. I hope he's getting a squad of detectives because, again, if you're going to vet each one, you're first of all going to have to listen to their story. Then you have to look for corroborating evidence. They're going to have to, if they say, listen, these 5 people were present, you got to find those 5 people. You've got to talk to them, find out if they're credible. You've got to do background checks, find out if they may have criminal convictions. That doesn't mean they're not credible, but if you have a criminal conviction, that's something that, is going to have to be addressed at trial because a good defense counsel is going to impeach and say, you're not telling the truth because you're somebody who has a criminal background. So those are the types of things they're going to be looking at to assess the credibility of, number one, the witnesses that they're going to put forward. Number two, to figure out if the survivor is telling the truth, which again, the vast majority of people that have report sexual assault are telling the truth. There's only a tiny minority where that is not the case. So It's a matter of how can they substantiate all of this and making sure that, again, this is not somebody who has a personal beef and is out for money or something along those lines. This is someone that's truly been harmed in this horrible way. So it's going to take a long time. And again, that's why the criminal case is going to play out first, because as you're going through this process of vetting each one, and then finally when you actually file the civil suit, then you have the discovery process where you're going to do depositions, where there's requests for production of evidence, all of that. So we're talking a multi-year process for the civil cases. This is not something, bing, bang, boom, is going to be over in 60 days. We're talking years here, unless, of course, there's a settlement.
Yeah, and who knows what's going to happen to those assets. You also never really know how much these celebrities really have. I heard he had $100 million mortgage out just on his Beverly Hills mansion, and you just never know, what level of debt they're in. You could have $1 billion, but if you have 1.1 billion in debt, you ain't a billionaire. So Space Coast here on the West Coast, he handles all our audio and other things. Melba happens to be my brother-in-law and the COE's brother. It's a family affair here. He gifted 5 Surviving the Survivor memberships. Tommy Scoville might be able to help out with this. What is Diddy's family, his origin story? I just don't understand how a man perpetrated such evil. I do know his dad was basically a gangster, a New York City gangster, and he died. He was murdered when Diddy was really young. That's obviously not good for a young child. But Tommy, what do we know about his upbringing?
Yeah, his dad was murdered when he was very young, and unfortunately for him, there were 2 very distinctive narratives about his dad. There was one that a lot of the people in that part of the city, that what they said, and there was another one that he probably had to tell himself and his friends, because as it is alleged, he ratted on some people, and that's what got him shot. And that's got to be a very tough thing, right? Especially if you're in that kind of an environment. But he tells a very different story. But there's regardless, he grew up without a dad there. And I think the real, in my humble opinion, I think that what we watched with this guy was what happened to him. I think he got into the music business the same kind of way. I think this has been going on for a really long time. And I think that he just basically did exactly what was done to him. And there's a lot of people who were sort of closer to that sphere of influence that said the same thing, that, this was not, he wasn't born this way. You know what I mean? This was something that, this was a learned behavior, because it wasn't just about sex. I mean, people, I think, are missing that. If you went to a convict and you said, will you do this if I let you out of prison? There's not a convict out there that won't make a deal with you, right? So is that consent? Because you're offering somebody a life, right? Everything you ever wanted right here on a silver platter. I don't think that's consent. Even without the drugs, I don't think that's consent. And the attorney said that that's where all of these victims, that's how he found everybody. These were auditions, right? This is the same stuff that Weinstein was doing, except viciously, more aggravated with drugs and with beatings and threats. This is you can't write this stuff. If this was a Hollywood script, you'd go, yeah, this is over the top. No one's going to believe this crap, right? For real. He got away with it for how long? Come on, this isn't plausible.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Nito Ceramics here. This is an interesting comment. Buzbee, the attorney today, is very brave. What he did is like taking on the mafia. It was confirmed today. He's a tough guy. He's got when you're a wealthy personal injury attorney, you can buy yourself a tank, and he has a tank on his front lawn, apparently. And he said he wasn't backing down. So I was intrigued by that for sure, because he's a guy now who could definitely be in the literal crosshairs of Sean Diddy Combs. I mean, people can go after this guy. But he seems like he's in it for the victims. No doubt he's going to get paid a lot of money if he wins these cases. But he's doing, I think, important stuff here in Houston. Dr. John Delatorre, to you, a lot of people are saying with this 9-year-old victim, and there was multiple minor victims, what's up with the parents? People have said that about Justin Bieber. The blame immediately goes to the parents. Is it justified? Is it the parents dropping the ball? Can you blame them?
Can you blame them? I guess you could blame them. I mean, the truth is that I don't know what any of these life situations were for any of these parents. I mean, they may have been in a position where there was no option to say no, right? And so, because I don't know what I mean, did they just offer up their child just for nothing? I doubt that happened. But the reality is that you don't need to physically force someone to get them to do something that you want them to do. You can offer them something. You can offer them a job. You could there are all these kinds of. Tommy was just talking about this, right? If you offer someone something, there's probably very little that they wouldn't give you in return for that thing. If this is something that it absolutely changes their life, I mean, again, I don't know what these life situations were for these parents, but to just assume that, well, I would never do it, therefore that they must be wrong. I think that's a wrong way to think about these problems. We don't know what any of us are going to do until we're put in that situation where we have to make the choice.
How about
And
this?
also,
Yeah, go ahead, Melba. Go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to hop in on that because again, I'm thinking about like R. Kelly and surviving R. Kelly and sort of like how all of that went down. And you could have a situation where you literally bring your child to the studio because you believe this person is above board, they're so nice and everything else. And they're like, oh yeah, have a seat in the waiting room. I'm just going to take your child back and we're going to do the audition, and then bring them out when we're done. And it could be something as innocent as that because the parents were trusting. They were in the building, they were in the area, but they weren't necessarily present and having their eyes on their child the entire time. So I agree with the doctor that we should not be necessarily jumping to conclusions and blaming the parents. But I will caution parents out there who want to bring their children and feel that their children have talent and could model or could, sing or whatever the case may be. There are predators out there. And it doesn't matter how nice and sweet and buttoned down they may seem. Don't take eyes off your child because your child is the most precious thing in this world. And I cannot even imagine what these parents are feeling right now, knowing that their child was violated in this way, knowing that, they could have protected them. I mean, that's the kind of guilt that I don't think anybody wants to carry. So, I think there is a cautionary tale in this, but I agree with the doctor. We don't automatically blame the parents on this one.
Yeah. There was an interesting comment, Dr. John from Mossberg, mom, which is she was asking if you think that Diddy himself was a victim of SA. Do you think that he was, and that's why he's now doing this to others? Not that it's an excuse, but people were curious about your take on that.
I mean, sure. What I'll go back to is that just because something bad happened to you in your past doesn't automatically mean that you're going to end up doing that thing in your future. Diddy did this thing because he wanted to do it. That's the end of the story, right? Whatever happened in his past, he's a grown man now. He doesn't have to imbibe. He doesn't have to fall victim to his impulses. He could overcome and override all of those things. Whatever that stuff that happened in his past, if he didn't go to therapy to deal with it, okay, fine. But that doesn't give you then the excuse, or you get to use that as a rationalization to violate someone now. Right? Diddy knew that doing what he was doing was wrong. He didn't care because he thought he could get away with it.
Yeah. Interesting. Super interesting. By the way, do you think he was in therapy with all that money? If you had to guess.
I think there was one time where he came out in a video and he said that he entered into rehab or something like. I mean, listen, celebrities live in a very different world than the rest of us do. I mean, what is rehab? I don't know what rehab was like for Diddy. I mean, he could have just had someone just telling him, "Hey, listen, right? Alcohol's not drugs, so alcohol's good," right? Like there could have been nonsense like that kind of stuff. Do I think? But even then, let's say he was in therapy. Do I think he was actually doing the work to make the changes that you need in order to live an authentic and healthy life? No, of course not, because that's not what he wanted. He wanted to hurt people. He wanted to abuse people. He wanted to get off. He wanted to have his freak offs. He didn't, and whatever he needed to do in order to, get people off his back, that's what he was going to do, and he'd go right back to doing it.
John Del Torre brings very interesting points. Not all psychologists are the same. Let's put it that way. La Mesa Filipino Food Club here in Toronto. To Melba, how long until we see Sean Combs' legal team using, in all caps, his children as leverage of how he's a great guy, he's sorry, he's going to reform, blah, blah, blah. He has a daughter. This is true. I think she's 22 months old. That's under 3 years old. What about that?
I think he already started. If I'm not mistaken, in his bond hearing, he offered up the baby's passports. He was like, hey, take everybody's passports. We're not going anywhere. And here's 50 million. Just let me out on bond so I can go back to my New York mansion. And so, he definitely used, his defense team used his children to say that he has ties to the community, is not going to go anywhere. How is he going to disappear with, multiple children? He's a famous person. His face is highly recognizable. But again, those arguments fell flat. I anticipate that at trial, of course, his kids are going to be coming in dressed up, front and center every single day, sitting behind their dad, supporting him, or at least giving the illusion of family unity. And then if and when, because I believe it's when he's convicted, of course, the argument is going to be you can't separate him from his kids. He grew up without a father. It would be so detrimental to them. All of this being true, but it's more detrimental for him to be out on the street abusing people than him being separated from his kids. So I think that the children are going to play a very much a starring role in all of this drama, which is tragic because, again, they're hearing horrible things about their father. I hope that they would not be in court, especially for the most graphic of the testimony. And that's just something you can't unsee and unhear. So I worry for the kids because that's a lot to have to deal with, that your father is a serial rapist.
Although some people are saying that the older sons might have been involved as well. So time will tell on that one. But his oldest son, I think, is 33. So he is a man himself. Olive Green, who's from the original New Jersey, off, I guess, the UK in the channel there. They say everything is about sex, but sex is about power. Tommy, I'm coming back to you, but what about John Del Torre? My mother, who's a licensed therapist, when she heard of this story, and she's 85 and she's heard everything in her lifetime, she said to me, Diddy is not into the sex, he's into the power, at least when it came to having sex with other men. Because I said, do you think he's gay? And she said, I don't. I think it's a power trip for him. You think she's right or wrong, or somewhere in the middle?
No, I think she's hitting the head, kind of spot on here. Just because men have sex with other men doesn't necessarily mean that they're homosexual. There is an element, particularly in this patriarchal society, in which we have constructed sex to be about power. I mean, yeah, he likes this idea that he can offend someone, that he likes this idea that he can put someone in a position where they feel shame, for being that's the part that he enjoys the most. I mean, there are certainly elements of exhibitionism and voyeurism, but again, none of that I think is the real issue. The real issue that I think he's dealing with is that he likes being the overlord. He likes seeing people put in positions where their own agency is taking away from them. He likes seeing people put in positions where that they'll know that they'll walk around with the scarlet letter on them, and he knows that he's the one that did it. That's the part that I think he enjoys the most when it comes to him having sex. I mean, sure, I'm sure he physically enjoys what he's doing, but for him, the arousal pattern is more about crossing those sexual boundaries and not the person not being able to do anything about it, no matter what.
And there you have from Carol, Diddy is sadistic, which I bet you is not far off from the truth. I want to get back to Tommy after I play this soundbite. This is now the second soundbite, and this is had Tommy and I with our mouths agape. Let's take a listen to this one. Again, Tony Buzbee from the news conference about Diddy earlier today. By the way, tomorrow, quick programming note, 12:30 p.m. Eastern time, Sarah Boone. She's the woman that zipped her boyfriend into a suitcase, and he suffocated to death. There's no end to the madness and violence in this country or this world. We're going to discuss her, and then at 3 p.m., she's actually got a hearing. So I'm going to try to take the hearing live after the show, and then it is the Jewish New Year. So we'll be back on the flip side on Monday, but that is tomorrow. Thank you, COE. Here is Tony Buzbee from earlier in the day, and then we'll go to Tommy.
I know this. Many of you came here thinking or hoping or perhaps believing that I may start naming names. That day will come, but it won't be today. The day will come when we will name names other than Sean Combs, and there's a lot of names. It's a long list already. And of course, I already know who some of these individuals are, but because of the nature of this case, we're going to make damn sure that we're right before we do that. But the names that we're going to name, assuming that our investigators confirm and corroborate what we've been told, are names that will shock you. These are individual cases. There are indeed other perpetrators involved. They will be revealed when that particular individual case is ready to be filed. They already know who they are.
I'm going to stop it right there. Tommy, there's something about his Houston drawl where you're on the screen twice because this is from earlier today. He sounds incredibly determined, and he's very successful at what he does. What do you think the entertainment industry and others around him, it doesn't have to just be singers or rappers, it could be anyone. What are they doing tonight, Tommy Scoville?
There's a lot of people panicking. I would imagine that people are going through, you got to get 10,000, selfies and things in your phone. Well, if you're one of those people that went to a bunch of these parties, he's got to be there's a bunch of these people just, am I one of these people that they're going to be calling in? Am I one of the tapes that they pulled out? There are people going, oh my God, every room in the house is on tape. Every room in there they were recording. Because there are people that did stuff in bedrooms and things, and they're going, oh man, that wasn't my wife. Or I was with someone of the same sex, right? Because they definitely were using that stuff as as a cudgel, right? This was a way to get the things that they were. It was more about control and power. His bodyguard, the most recent one, tells a story of Diddy before a chef came walking in. He said, "Watch me make this chick cry." Right, and he tells the story of how he just berates this girl who did nothing, right? But he did until she was weeping. And then, brought her back in and did the apology thing, gave her a little bit of cash. And it's a sick, sick human being. And we're going to see more and more of this. And you know what? I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but I bet this guy does a whole lot more watching and taking care of himself than he does other stuff. I bet he needs to drug people in order to be comfortable enough to do what he does. I think he's got some issues.
That is probably the understatement of the year. Debbie Phillips says Diddy is a narcissist and thinks he's God. Some statistics that were thrown out at this press conference, and then I'll play the rest of this. 120 individuals, we know that 60 of them, this is interesting, are male, 60 are female. So a lot of times you think it's just the women, not in this case, and not in a lot of other cases. 60% of the people who plan to bring these civil cases, 60% are African-American, 30% are white, 10% of Hispanic or Latino heritage. Again, 3,285 people contacted this law firm. The youngest victim, 9 years old. They come from 25 different states, with the majority from California. And all this dates back to 1991 to the current date. Let's listen to the rest of this. We'll go to Melba next.
And I'm talking here about not just the cowardly, but complicit bystanders. That is, those people that we know watched this behavior occur and did nothing. And I'm talking about the people that participated, encouraged it, egged it on. They know who they are. call them the facilitators of foul play, willing participants in vile conduct. As we identify them, each will be part of this case as defendants. These defendants will not only include individuals, but would also include corporate entities who ultimately profited off of this culture and behavior. I'm looking at banks, pharmaceutical companies, hotels. We know that many of these individuals were paid cash. We know that many of these individuals involved, whether they were the ones being assaulted and abused, or they're witnessing other people being assaulted and abused and then paid and threatened and told to leave. Typically paid 10 grand in cash and told to leave, and then threatened as they were leaving. So in addition to Sean Combs, you should know the defendants in these cases we're going to file will include anyone, of course, who engaged in the assault or exploitation, anyone who participated in such in any way, anyone who encouraged or facilitated this conduct, anyone who was in the room and watched it happen but made no effort to stop it, any venue or venue owner who was aware of what was going on but failed to stop it, any individual or entity who knew about the conduct and benefited from it but did nothing to report it or stop it, and any individual or entity who covered it up or helped cover it up. These people who know who they are should just come forward now. I would imagine, as we speak here, there are a myriad of people who are very nervous. You can't hide skeletons in the closet forever. I would expect there are many people out there right now who are desperately searching their memories as they delete their texts and data.
He's not playing around, Melba. It certainly seems like he is intent. And he's saying you're not safe if you had anything to do with this. Shout out to Analytical Blarney AB, friend of the show, Diddy's own worst evidence witness. Analytical Blarney AB also gifting the membership, so thank you. But he's not playing around, Melba. The question is, how do you, and I asked you this earlier, but how do you cast a net that's large enough to scoop all these people and institutions and businesses up?
Well, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So literally it's going to be one witness at a time, one, survivor at a time, telling their story, saying, hey, these are the people that assaulted me. Here, maybe they have video, maybe they have photos of, before the assault, when they were at the party, hanging out, things were good, hey, selfie, here's who I was with. Now you can say, okay, I was with so-and-so. They can corroborate that I was there that night. And, they may have seen things that occurred. I think that there's going to be a race to the courthouse steps because, listen, Buzbee fired that shot across the bow. He said, listen, govern yourself accordingly. If you know something, say something, because if I come looking for you, it's not going to be cute. So, and I think the feds are basically doing the same thing. So you're going to start to see these, employees, especially the ones who I can't even imagine were on cleanup duty, and had to come behind, that choice of words, but had to, go into the room afterwards and clean up this mess and knew what happened. They're going to be the ones to be like, listen, I'm not trying to go to jail for this. Okay. Like 10 grand has long been spent. My rent's been paid, whatever. I don't want to go to jail. So let me tell the story. So I think a lot of folks are going to come forward, but I think also that I just have a feeling, and it's not a good one, that we're going to be horrified when we learn who else is involved in this. And I think,
yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off there. By the way, this question is interesting about statute of limitations because this goes back 30 something years. I know there's no statute on homicide, but what about these cases?
These cases, no, there's no, the statute of limitations would have expired. Now, there may be something with regards to the child. So if it was like a late disclosure or something along those lines, there may be some legal maneuvers that can occur in terms of bringing forth a criminal case involving the children. But in terms of the adults, 20, 30 years ago, that the statute of limitations already passed. But but they can still possibly be able to testify in the criminal trial as part of what we call prior bad act evidence. So basically, they're going to show that this wasn't an accident. This wasn't a one-off. This isn't one person lying. This is a common plan or scheme because he lures people in, he drugs them, he assaults them, he videotapes them, repeat over and over and over again for decades. So even though they may not get the justice they're looking for from the criminal system, their voices may still be able to be heard in order to eventually hold him accountable for the charges that he's facing now.
Yeah, and you were talking about your gut. In your gut, do you think we're going to see bigger celebrities than P. Diddy fall as a result of this?
100%, 1000%. I mean, again, hearing some rumors, I'm not going to speak now because, again, and I support what Buzbee did in terms of, I'm not going to name names now because he's not trying to face a defamation lawsuit or anything like that because he says somebody's name and now there's no evidence to back it up or the case falls apart. But I think it's looking at the circles he ran in and the types of people that he's been photographed with over the years that have been to his parties. I lived in Miami. I live in Miami. I lived in South Beach at the time that his parties were big and, it was a thing. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be very scary and sad and disappointing when you see, people that you admired or you enjoyed their music or you enjoyed their movies or whatever the case may be, and you find out that they're a gross individual.
That's coming. I can guarantee you that, as Melba just did. NJ Coolchick 67. Joel, do you think that Meave Moen, otherwise known as Steve Cohen, could he work on booking Eminem and 50 Cent? He's on the phone right now, the minute he heard this, to spill some tea on the Puffster. One thing about Steve Cohen, he's a huge hip-hop star and knows a bunch of them, so I'm sure he is working on it. Steve books the best guests, not only in all of true crime, but just period, and you're seeing it play out here right now. So not only was there a 9-year-old Dr. John Delatorre, but Tony Buzbee talked about a woman today who claims that Diddy once laced her drink when she was pregnant. She was pregnant. And this is a quote from her allegation. She attended a group dinner allegedly with Sean Combs in Miami. She wasn't drinking because she was pregnant, but whatever she drank at the table, apparently, according to her, was laced with something. He then added that she blacked out and woke up in the same bed, again, allegedly, with Mr. Combs in his mansion in Miami. I'm not going to use the words, but her private parts, both of them, were torn and sore. What level of depravity does it take it to do this to a pregnant woman? I mean, that's just next level insanity.
I mean, is it next level? I mean, given everything that we know about what he's done, I mean, it seems pretty par for the course. I mean, why wouldn't he then violate a pregnant woman? I'm sure that there's, I mean, I know that there is a fetish for this kind of thing, and I'm sure he thought that he, wanted to see what it was like, and he wanted all his friends to see what it was like. I mean, we know that case out in France with that woman who had been violated for 50 years of her life. I'm sure, it's with him, it's never just one person, right? Whoever's at the table has to participate for however it is that they're going to participate, either as a victim or as a perpetrator, right? So, I mean, is it a different level? I mean, not really. I mean, it seems to be just the kind of the sick, twisted thing that he would want to do to feed his own ego. So I'm not surprised.
Tommy, I'll throw you under the bus because this is a big name. We'll just go with J-Lo as she had things to worry about from what you've dug into.
Well, the back in the 90s, that shooting that took place at the nightclub, it has been alleged that she may have kind of muled the weapon in and out of the club. And after that incident, she was arrested, he was arrested, but a lot of weird stuff happened in that case. a lot of really weird stuff happened, and a guy named Shine Barrow went to prison. And then when Shine got out, he said, I didn't do that. He said, I didn't do that at all. And, you know, I did what was best for my country, is what he said, straight up. And there's a lot of weird things with record deals that kind of looks like it was a slick way to pay this guy $4 million for the 8 years that he spent in prison. It's either that or he signed with the most understanding record label in history, because he hasn't delivered anything on these albums, and they don't seem to be too angry about it. You know, it's a very interesting case. I don't know if they could reopen that. You know, if they found out that you know what happened was a hustle, maybe they could reopen the case. There's a woman who from day one said, I looked at Diddy as he was firing at me, which would make sense because she took some of that to the face. It's still in there, and she didn't want it out ever. And she's saying right now, if this buries him, I'll let you take this out of my face. And there's a lot of people, I think, that are kind of sick and tired of this, you know, really. And for all of the people who go, you know, I don't know why this is such a big deal and why so many people watch it. Nobody watched the Epstein stuff, right? Nobody's really paying any attention to that. And then the next thing you know, he kind of disappeared in a puff of smoke. I think it's great that everybody's paying attention to this. I really do. I think it's gets us the best chance for justice in this because everybody's involved.
I mean, Tommy, there's some crazy rumors coming out too. We were talking about that Diddy apparently, according to one rumor, sold one of these videos with famous celebrities for something like $500 million on the dark web. I would have to see evidence of that to know for sure. But Dr. John De La Torre, why is it that we are so enamored with these celebrities? I was telling Tommy this in the earlier show. If you remember O.J. Simpson, before O.J. Simpson, he was an announcer, Monday Night Football, handsome, charismatic, the Hertz commercials, you know, hurdling over the turnstile. Everyone loved OJ. I mean, they absolutely loved OJ. And then we found out who the real OJ is. But what is up with celebrity? Why do we all look up to these boneheads?
I think that has more to do with how our society is constructed than the celebrities themselves. I mean, we can have a conversation about who wants to be a celebrity, who wants to be a star. Like, we can have that conversation. But in terms of what makes them a celebrity, for the most part, it's whatever entertainment machine that they're in, coinciding with what society views as being entertainment and being important at that moment. So I think that we are enamored with celebrity because we imprint something on them that we wish to have. And we make it so that we believe that we are in relationships with them, that we know who they are by the movies and the TV and the music that they do. We feel connected with them because their job is to build that emotional connection. But again, they're not the only people assigned to this thing. I mean, other people write this stuff, other people direct this stuff. So it's meant to pull at your heartstrings. It's meant to be connected. You know, why are celebrities paid so much? Why are athletes paid so much? That says more about our society than people wanting to be paid that much.
This is true too from Tirda Derekashani. There are rumors that Jay-Z will be drawn into this as well. The rumor mill is certainly churning around that as well. Just some of the details about this, about what he was making these underage, these minors do on the promise that he would make them stars. But Melba, to you, I'm kind of particularly interested because a good percentage, I think 55% of the 120, so that's over 60 of the people today, reported stuff previously, and they went to hospitals. You know, when you go to a hospital with a SA case, they give you a test, or they're supposed to. What happened? Who dropped the ball here with these hospitals? Aren't they supposed to report assaults like this?
Yeah, so when you go to the hospital after a sexual assault, what you get administered what's called a rape kit, where basically they're testing to be able to collect any DNA evidence that can then be sent to the lab for future prosecution. But at the same token, if you may have reported it to the hospital, you may have told the medical personnel that you were assaulted, but you could also say, you know what, I don't want the police involved. And the doctors can't force you to go to the police. Now, if it's a minor, if it's a child, that's a separate issue, because now a doctor's a mandatory reporter. So if a child comes to you having been sexually assaulted, you can't not say anything. But when it's an adult that says, listen, they do the rape kit and they're like, you know what, I don't want to go to the police, it pretty much ends there. Now, there is the possibility, much like in the Weinstein case, where people did report to the police, but then the police didn't believe it. Or, we saw it in the Epstein case here in Florida, when the Palm Beach, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Palm Beach basically pled the case out to nothing, because they were like, well, the survivors weren't credible. They were all, sex workers, this, that, and the other thing. One was using drugs or whatever, not thinking about the fact that being sexually assaulted is traumatizing. And then sometimes people self-medicate to be able to deal with the pain, irregardless of that. So there may be that whole situation where police departments may not have believed the survivors and never did a thorough follow-up investigation. Because again, yes, you may have the rape kit that substantiates that you did, in fact, you were raped and it was this person. But then if the defendant, Diddy, whoever, his bodyguard, says, well, it was consensual. If you don't have any evidence to rebut that, you've got a problem.
Yeah, and obviously with the fear of celebrity and the repercussions, and he told people you will get severe blowback if you turn on me. He threatened everybody. This next thing has come up before, and I don't want to be crazy, but I'm curious since we've got the psychologist on here. But first, I'm going to have Tommy. By the way, this could definitely get us in trouble with the YouTube. So we'll tread lightly, Tommy Scoville. But Cat Williams, he said that Diddy tried to get him to put a hard-boiled egg in his bottom. What does a psychologist think about that? But first, Tommy, explain this story, and then we'll have. I got a little smirk from Delatorre, who's unflappable. He can't be phased because he's heard it all. But Tommy Scoville, what is the egg story here? It's come up multiple times.
I've never heard that from Cat Williams, and I do watch Cat anytime I get the chance. But I did hear Suge Knight say that this week on his podcast from jail. And let's see if we can do it this way. This was a test that new artists, male new artists, would have to do to see if they were ready. And they would insert an egg into the gentleman's backside. And if it broke on the way in, the term was, you got to go out and put more work in. And I think that's really, if there's some video out there of him saying, boy, you putting that work in. You can watch those. There's some videos that get a lot creepier after you hear Suge Knight tell that story. But he swears that was a real thing.
Wow. By the way, someone said that I called Steve Cohen a hip hop star. The guy can actually drop lyrics like Eminem on top of booking hip hop stars. Don't be fooled by the book cover. What's on the inside is what counts. John Delatorre, what about this egg story? This is, again, just depravity on steroids. You said before when I asked you about the pregnant woman, why would I be surprised? He's doing all these other things. Does the egg fall into that category, or is that outside the purview of even insanity, the egg?
It is and it isn't. I'm not surprised to hear that it is connected to up-and-coming stars, right, or up-and-coming musicians or musicians that are trying to sign to the label. I'm not surprised to hear that this is some kind of initiation tactic, right? Again, this is hazing. And now, is it sexual? Yes, it is sexual, and yes, it is. But I don't think it's used in that way. It's again used to shame the person into engaging in the behavior. And again, this is, if you want me to bless, right? If I'm Diddy, if you want me to bless your track, if you want me to sign you to my label, then you have to do whatever I say, whenever I say it, right? There can't be any discussion. And if I tell you that you need to go out and you need to work, right? What he means is have sex with other men, right? If I tell you that you need to go out, then you need to go out and you need to do that. And you can't come back questioning me. So this is another avenue with which he is gaining power over these individuals. He has put their future, right? A lot of these people, they see that as the only way out of whatever circumstance that they find themselves in.
Bingo.
And so they have to then do this thing. And if they don't do it, then they'll either be discarded literally or discarded figuratively. I mean, however you want to define discarded, I will agree with that definition. But this is just another aspect of shaming the victim because you know that you have their future in their hands, and that's what they want.
Yeah.
Well, listen, all I got to say is Cat Williams at the beginning of this year said 2024 will be the year of truth.
He did. Yeah, he did. He did.
None of us were ready for this.
Yeah, this was definitely way too much truth. Someone just made the comment, Melba, that they thought Rico had something to do with the YSL trial, like a defendant in the trial. But people are confused about Rico. Can you just give us like a little primer on that for everyone to understand? Because he is facing Diddy's Rico charges, from what I understand.
Yeah, so Rico is not a dude. Rico stands for, it's an acronym for the Racketeer, Influence, and Corrupt Organizations Act, which basically was designed to go after the mob. So it's basically crimes that are committed in furtherance of a criminal organization. So in this instance, these were all crimes in furtherance of Diddy's criminal organization, which was basically him purveying, these young people and sex workers and random victims to his friends for his own pleasure, et cetera, et cetera. So it's all of these crimes put together as a bigger pattern to further, and to whether it be for money, whether it be for power, whatever the motivation is, it's all of the crimes put together as part of an organized effort. So hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, there you go. We're going to wrap it up in a second. There was another comment in here that caught my attention because I've got 2 young daughters and a younger son. But Dr. John Della Torre, Diddy, I think, has how many daughters? 3 daughters, and one of them, I think, Tommy, you can correct me if I'm wrong. And people said, how could he do this while raising daughters, especially one that I think is, under 2? What's your answer to that? How do these people do this? I'll say this. I'm good friends with Kerry Rawson. Her dad was the BTK serial killer. Parents do some crazy ass, what. But why did Diddy have no regard for the women in his life?
Well,
go ahead, sir.
Yeah. So
go ahead, John.
First of all, I'm going to tell you that people were not people in his life, even his own children. But more than that, you can't look at it like, well, because he has daughters, then somehow that means that he's going to be a better person, right? You can't look at it like that. That's not how he sees the world. That may be how our viewers and the audience see the world, but that's not how he sees it. The two things aren't the same thing. He can violate whoever he wants, whenever he wants to. He just didn't want to violate his children. Now, we don't even know that to be true. But what I'm saying is that you can't do this idea that, well, because he has daughters, that all of a sudden that means that he's somehow more empathic because the daughters make him more, aligned with the patriarchy and, cis hetero stuff. Like, that's ridiculous. He'll do whatever he wants to do. He doesn't care what relationship you have with him. It's whatever he wants. And maybe he just didn't want to abuse them at that time.
It's crazy that we're talking about all this, but the truth definitely is coming out. He is a former inmate, Tommy Scoville, in the federal prison system, but he is much more than that. He is now the host of the Lifeboat that helps people with sobriety and cults and crims, if I got it the order correct there. Tommy's a good dude, and he's been to hell and back. He had a bad drug addiction that got him into robbing those banks, but by all accounts, he has turned his life around, and he's trying to do what he can to help who he can. Tommy, your final thoughts on this for this evening. You and I are going to continue down this Diddy path, and we have no idea what each day brings, but I know you and I will be texting each other in disbelief at some of the things that we are hearing, which we've already been doing. But go ahead, Tommy, your final thoughts.
I know that we say this every single time that something like this happens. We say this is the tip of the iceberg. I think this is probably a big size chunk of the iceberg, but we're not even close to seeing all of this yet. I mean, just this law firm says there might be another 120. That's double what they said today. That's huge. It's frightening, but I hope everybody really leans in on this and maybe give some thought to what the word consent means, because it blows me away in 2024 that we just keep having to go over this. I mean, honestly, it's almost frightening. If somebody holds something over you, it's not consent. If somebody drugs you, it's not consent, right? If somebody forces you physically, it's not consent. Even if you went out there on your own for whatever reason, right? All that goes out the window when you get drugged. It's disturbing.
It sure is. A final question here for Jazzy. Question from Melba. Considering the charges that Diddy is facing, if convicted, does he only have to serve half of his sentence to be eligible for parole, or is there a minimum? I think right now he's hoping it ain't life in prison. Other people think he deserves the ultimate penalty, which is not on the table. But Melba, your answer?
Yeah, my answer to that is he's likely not going to get parole because of the volume and severity of the charges, even though he has no criminal history. Yes, there was the incident with the shooting and all of that, but that didn't result in a conviction to the best of my knowledge. So to the best of my knowledge, he has no criminal convictions, but because of the scope and breadth of the charges, I don't see a scenario that any parole board is going to let him out. So even if theoretically he's eligible after, half of his sentence, they're not going to give it to him. And also keep in mind, he's 50 something years old, right? So if he ends up getting even a 30-year sentence, that's a life sentence. Because, as folks who have, returned from prison can attest, prison ages you, and it shortens your lifespan. So
let me tell you, I'm the same age as Diddy, and it's scary. It goes quickly. My mom tells me the fastest period of time is from 50 to 80. I'm not ready for it, Melba. I'm not ready, Melba. I need
just
more
quickly,
time.
They did away with parole. Just real quickly, the feds did away with it. So the parole system is now gone. Yeah, is now gone completely, and he'll have to do 85% of whatever they give him before he's got any shot of getting out. And then he's got to find a halfway house that will deal with him with those charges. Normally, if you have those kind of charges, halfway houses don't want you anywhere near them, right? They don't want the liability of that. So he's going to be in there a really long time, no matter what sentence they give him. And the RICO stuff, everybody's saying he could get 15 years. The way the feds work is this: that guideline, RICO is making that thing every time. Oh, so you're the kingpin, 3 more criminal history levels, right? And each time that happens, I took it with one of his charges, and he's looking at 60 years. I didn't bother putting the rest of them into the guidelines, but he's looking at a ton of time. I mean, a ton of time.
Yeah. By the way, my mom said that about 50 to 80 in my book, Surviving the Survivor, which is about her. A couple people mentioned it. That's the rule on the show. If someone mentions it, I can mention it. It's a book that I guarantee you will change how you look at life and will make you laugh. And I'm working on my book about my dad who passed away called Surviving the Psychiatrist. And my dad, he was born during the Great Depression, 1933. All he ever worried about was money. And then when he got to about 80, says, I don't give a crap about money. I'm worried about time. And then the time ran out. John Delatorre, is there any way to stop time?
Yes, by living in the moment, right? Don't stop worrying about what is happening, in the future. Start living in the moment that you're living in right now. Stop time immediately.
Genius answer. There's something about John genius. That's a genius answer. I'm going to tell people that. And I'm going to say it was John Delatorre. I won't take the credit. Non-Snowflake says, with over 3,000 reports of abuse made against him, I think Diddy is the most prolific nonce ever to come to light in human history. just to this point, Dr. John Delatorre, do we see these kinds of numbers in other cases, or is this an extreme amount of potential victims?
Oh yeah, it would be rare to see someone with that one person with that number of victims. And it's not just sex offense victims. He's got all kinds of different victims. He's done all kinds of different things. So I think that goes to the level of power that he had, that he was willing to engage in all of these disparate things. Any one of them could have gotten in trouble from a long time ago. So I don't think we'll ever see someone as prolific as this anytime soon. No.
Yeah. For those who do not know, now you know. Dr. John Delatorre, PsyD, he's a licensed psychologist in Texas, Arizona, and New York State. Final question for you, John, and feel free to offer your final thoughts. But do you think this changes our culture at all, that Hollywood celebrities won't be as deified, if you will, going forward, that the mystique of celebrity might be brought down a couple of notches?
No, not even a little bit. And what's worse is that there's going to be all different kinds of people that you're going to watch on TikTok, and you're going to watch on all kinds of stuff, who are going to try to fill this void of celebritydom, and they're going to do just as bad stuff. So celebrity ain't going anywhere anytime soon. Society needs to change.
Look at John. In all seriousness, we've got a couple of these comments tonight. Dr. John, please share you can't share a number here, email, and what insurance you accept. But I'll put it this way: you could probably find them with the Google.
Yeah, I'm not hard. All you have to just Google me, and you're going to see everything that I do. So
yeah, so there you go. You can Google. It's one word, Delatorre. One word,
yeah.
Delatorre, and we could all use Dr. John Delatorre in our lives for sure. Last but not least, she is a New York native who talks with her hands and does not mess around. Her name is Melba Pearson. She's called Miami home for over 20 years. I'm going to have lunch with her because I live in Miami too, and I don't know how far we are. She also works as a professor on top of being a lawyer at FIU, Florida International University. Brady Starr says, please bring all these guests back. We are going to do that. Melba, first, just a question logistically. What is going behind the scenes with Diddy's defense now? What are they maneuvering? What are they trying to do at this moment in time? And your final thoughts?
I think that they're trying to figure out where the next bombshell is going to come from and who it's going to come from. They're going to, I know some defense attorneys don't like to ask their clients if they did it or whatever the case may be, but this is one where they're going to be like, is there anybody else who can say you did XYZ? Are there any other tapes anywhere? So that way they can start damage control and start figuring out how to discredit the different survivors that are coming forward, or figure out what kind of defense they're going to use. Because, I mean, consent can only take you so far. And when you get to victim number 3,000, not so much. So I think that they're going to be trying to figure out how to discredit the survivors and, figuring out their legal strategy right now as more and more people come forward. And, my final thought is this: if God forbid you have been sexually assaulted, someone close to you has been, please report and get the help you need. There's Dr. Delatorre. I don't know if he does telehealth, but, find you a counselor, find you a spiritual advisor, whatever. It's a lot of pain to have to carry. And even the criminal process, even if you go through the whole trial process and get a conviction, you still have to heal after that. That's just closing one chapter. So please get the help that you need. There's a lot of resources out there. RAINN is a great organization, RAINN. They do a lot of work with sexual assault survivors. There's plenty of local resources locally. Just get you a therapist, go on BetterHelp, whatever, but just get that help, please. And most importantly, believe survivors.
And Melba, if you can email me some of that, we're connected now, and I'll put it in the show summary. You can find that. I've got to say, all our panels are really top notch. But the show tonight was next level with a great flow and a great vibe. Kudos again to Steve Cohen. Kudos as always to the COE. You guys, I don't think have any idea how hard they work behind the scenes. It goes without saying, Space Coast on the West Coast, who has an IQ of about 390. He handles all the audio. He puts out all the shows on the audio platforms. And then, of course, we've got the mods, got the best mods in all the YouTube. So it is a team effort, and we appreciate it. If you found the shows informative, please please hit subscribe, please share with friends. And there's a Patreon link if you'd like to support us. We could use all the help we can get here at STS on many different levels. But thank you again. I have to echo this. Great show, fabulous guests. Love you, America. Love you, Florida, Miami, Florida, where two of us are from. Arizona, the great state of Texas. Don't mess with Texas. By the way, Wendy Williams did break her silence about all this and was calling Diddy out in a big way. I was going to get to that. We just ran out of time. We're back tomorrow, 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. She zipped her boyfriend into a suitcase. It's just some more crazy. And I need John De La Torre to like be in my back pocket at all times. But crazy case. And we're going to do the show and then the hearing at 3 p.m. Eastern time if we can figure out how to get that feed. I was reading this. That's why I stumbled for 1,000. Joel, you're much better these days. That means I used to suck, I guess. Stay humble, please, always. I will try to do my best. There we go. Again, love you all. We will see you tomorrow, 12:30 p.m. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you tomorrow.